Hello, everyone. I'm Janet Salmons, Methods Guru for Sage Method Space, and I'm happy today to be joined by Stephen Gorard to talk about his new book, How to Make Sense of Statistics. But before we get started, if you are new to Method Space, this is a blog community hosted by Sage Publishing, and we are interested in everything to do with designing, conducting, analyzing research, writing about it, sharing results in all different kinds of ways to hopefully create some authentic impact. And you can see at the center of this Venn diagram, we have teaching and learning, because we think that whether you are a student or an experienced researcher, we all have something to learn. So I hope that you will find this interview of interest and take a look at on the posts from Dr. Gorard and the book that we're going to discuss. So why don't you start by introducing yourself?
I'm Stephen. So I'm a professor of education and public policy at Durham University in the United Kingdom, in the UK. And part of my passion is to try and improve the quality of research in social science.
So tell us about this new book. Why is it important, and who do you think would benefit from reading it?
Yes, it's come from quite a few years of teaching and thinking. And I think it's important because what I'm always trying to do is make it clear that using numbers, using statistics in research is a relatively easy phenomenon. It's not a tricky process. It doesn't involve complicated maths and so on. So although the book has both very elementary and quite advanced sections, it's intended to be for the widest possible audience. So we'd like it to be for, obviously new researchers, early career researchers, maybe postgraduate students and so on. But also members perhaps of the wider public, including policymakers, advisors, and so on, who have to deal with statistics as part of their job, and some of whom may be a little bit nervous. We want to take that nervousness away and explain the joy.
Well, I particularly like the title of your book about making sense, and I think a lot of people are intimidated by statistics, and so your approach and the way that have organized the book would seem to be very helpful for that. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about kind of what made you take this kind of an approach to just statistics.
Well, I suppose now I've been doing research in my field for about 25 years. I've got many hundreds of publications, substantive ones, not about research methods. So I don't see myself primarily as someone who writes about methods, but who actually does research.
Right.
So I may approach this slightly different from somebody who would be a methods expert. I'm talking about the lessons I've learned. And in many ways, the stuff I've done has become simpler. I don't mean easier for me to do, obviously with experience better. I mean that I find less and less need to have any complex approaches or techniques of the kind that will put people off, either those people who are starting out or those people who maybe want to use some numbers in their work. Because I don't think these complex things are necessary. In fact, as I point out in some of the more advanced chapters in the book, I think a lot of them don't make sense, even to the people who use them. What I'm trying to do is to declutter the whole field and then stick with the stuff. We're dealing with complex issues in social science. And if you're trying to measure things in social science, it's obviously an intrinsically difficult thing to do. So we've got to try and make that as easy as possible and spend as much of our brain space, as much of the time we have discussing and thinking about the meaning of these things, and not following kind of magical formulae and superstitious rituals. That's what I suppose I'm trying to fight against.
Right. Well, I think your practical experience side comes through in this book. And you know, as a qualitative methodologist myself, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how this book might be useful. I mean, when you know, you talk about the kind of statistical literacy, you know, how might this be useful to someone who, you know, really is, you know, just completely inexperienced with dealing with statistics, but need to be able to, if nothing else, you know, understand the literature, even if they aren't using statistics in their own research.
Okay. Well, apologies, but I prefer not to use terms like qualitative and quantitative and so on. I don't really believe there are different paradigms. And I think that all of us have the capacity to deal with numeric information of the kind that you would need to use in social science. And you can see that in real life. And people don't behave like that in real life. They don't, if they're buying a new house or a new apartment, they wouldn't try and decide what kind of epistemology they'd be using when they were buying the house. They would just use and synthesize all kinds of data, you know. So they would want to know the price. They wouldn't say, "Oh, don't tell me how much it costs. I'll just buy it because I don't use numbers."
Right,
Nor would
because
they
I
say,
like the color.
"Yeah, I'm not gonna visit it because you know, or I'm not going to visit because I don't believe in sensory data." Or you know, whereas actually, you know, you go in and you look at the noise from the neighbours and you smell the back bedroom for damp and you whatever it is that you're going to do, and then you combine and synthesize all of that with the price and the insurance costs and whatever it is, and you come to a decision about whether you're going to buy it. And we do this naturally, whether we're you know, whatever we're doing, you know, arranging a trip, arranging a holiday. And I don't really think that the skills needed for someone to do social science research using numbers is any different. The other reason, I suppose, is another reason, is obviously that you'd surely expect all researchers to read previous literature in their field, and some of that will involve numbers. So if they can't cope or simply reject the idea of using any material that has numbers in it, they're going to bias their reviews of evidence. And if they don't understand it, then if they don't reject it, they'll just have to trust it. And you know, it may come as no surprise to you at all that a lot of the work that is done in social science involving numbers is not necessarily very trustworthy, and that we as readers have to critique it, and then we have to have the skills, the craft skills, to critique.
So
I'm very keen on that everybody needs to use numbers, but it doesn't have to be very complicated.
Right. Yeah, it's a very you know, practical and appealing approach. And so what you have a number of online resources and exercises throughout the book. So maybe you could talk a little bit about those. How might someone, I mean, if someone is using this in a course, they have you know, professor to tell them how to move through it, but someone who is using this to develop their own statistical literacy, you know, how might they use some of these resources?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously every chapter has a topic, and it's meant to be building in an order that would leave you with complete knowledge. I mean, maybe more knowledge than you or someone else would need, but it's up to people to duck out whenever they think that they've got enough. But so there are examples. They tend to start with made up examples and simplified examples, and then in every section there are real life examples from social science that portray the ideas in real life, and again showing that you can get published, you can make differences to governments, to real life, using these relatively simple techniques. So we have those. Now the difficulty is, you know, well, how do you analyze this data? You know, because everyone uses different kinds of software. So the book tends to use the two most widely used pieces of software. So Excel from Microsoft, which is part of the Office thing, which I think everybody, or just about everybody, will have access to. And the exercises can be done in Excel. And it also uses SPSS, the IBM software, which is widespread but not free at the point of use. But most students will have access to it. And then there are notes about other forms of software. So then you have the examples are given, the full, instructions for doing the
Mhm.
analysis or presenting the graph or whatever it is are
Mhm.
in the book, along with the full output, and then a kind of notation of, well, what does this actually mean? Because it's a bit scary sometimes. These
Right.
these are software generated
Right.
stuff or
Right.
shorthands and long words and things. We try and translate that. But
Mhm.
all of the data sets for all of the examples are then on a website linked to the book.
Right.
So that if you were going through at your own pace, which I think is a perfectly good thing to do, you could go to those. You can then either rerun the analysis, check I get it right, check you get the same answer, those kinds of things.
Mhm.
You could adapt the instructions for your own data and use those techniques, or use the
Right.
data for other. So each data set has replication of the exercises in the book, and then it
Mhm.
has some, well, why don't you also try this kind of thing, where you can work at your own pace on something
Mhm.
different. So I hope people find those helpful.
Right.
And obviously, if there are issues, I'm happy for people to contact me. But I think it's all there on the website to do.
Well, it seems like it's a real kind of hand-holding approach that um, I think a lot of readers will find valuable, whether they're, new to statistics or, need to brush up their knowledge. So is there anything else you would like to share about the book?
Well, thank you. What I was hoping to achieve is then that, yes, the what you call the hand holding, but the taking people through to show
Mhm.
actually this isn't as scary as you thought,
Mhm.
leads you to
Right.
the point, the real underlying point, which is that
Right.
all of this generating tables and frequencies and standard deviations or whatever it is that you're going to do, this isn't the analysis, any more than transcribing your interviews in
Right.
in-depth work is the analysis. It
Right.
gets you to the point where you can see, here's the difference between the groups, or here's the trend over time, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
The real analysis is a thought that goes into what does this mean? What does this signify?
Right. Right.
And I think that's the same, whatever kind of research you're doing, and that's the hard brain work. So when
Mhm.
I say it's easy, what I mean is the bits I think a lot of early career researchers or hesitant researchers would think of as difficult is easier than you imagine. And the difficult bits are the same difficulty as they would be with any kind of research.
Right.
I'm not saying you haven't got to use your brain, but your
Right.
brain is not best used for the technical issues. It's best used for the what's this all about? The so
Right.
what, I
Right.
call it.
Right. The real interpretation to give
Yeah,
find out, what did we learn from this study and what are the implications for practice or for future research? So,
would you want anyone to spend any money on it as a policy, or for
right.
people's lives to be risked on the basis of this? So
Right.
a lot of the book at its heart is about how can we judge whether we should trust research results, numeric or otherwise.
Which is
And
really, I think, even more critical, than, at this time than ever, because, we do have, so much disinformation and, people who are using numbers, but they're not using them in necessarily the most honest and transparent way. So this would help readers to evaluate, um,
exactly, I mean,
whether
it's true of
that information.
everyday life as we watch figures on COVID-19 hospitalizations or
Right.
recovery rates and so on, and everyone's doing a little bit of statistical analysis in their head about risk rates or whatever. But it's also true of research. And I say this thing about judging other research. It really is the truth that we do need to improve the quality of research involving numbers.
Right.
And I don't think it's going to come almost like it's not going to come from within, if you know what I mean. I
Mhm.
think the people who have developed, marketed, complicated approaches
Mm.
to dredging through data, they're not necessarily the ones to say, hey, maybe we don't need this, or maybe these are misleading people.
Right.
I'd like to sort of resist some of that and get
Mhm.
a wider group of people who are appropriately critical, appreciative, but also critical of
Mhm.
the use of numbers in research, as in real life.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking about this book. And viewers will also have a chance to read a number of posts and learn more about your thinking around how to work with numbers, how to understand them, and how to use what you learn in your own research. So thank you.
Well, thank you.